The desert wind blew through the canyon like a live creature, bringing dust, warmth, and the far-off shout of a woman in fear. Luke Carter pulled back his horse, every inner sense yelling trouble, but his body acted before his brain could think. He slipped off the saddle and went after the noise, boots crushing on rocks, heart beating stronger with each step. The canyon opened fast, showing a harsh picture fixed in his mind for always. 3 bandits had trapped an Apache woman against the stone wall. One man held his fist in her hair, pushing her head back, while another walked around her slowly, a knife shining in the sun like a sign of end. Her wrists were tied, her dress ripped, but her eyes still shone with strength. Luke yelled, his voice bouncing off the canyon's sides. For a short moment, all stopped. Then everything burst into action. Luke shot once, the sound loud in the tight space, and the man with the knife fell without noise. The other 2 ran at him right away, faces changed with anger. Luke had little time to lift his arm before hurt tore through his side. A knife went deep, hot and wild. He stepped back, but kept standing, hitting his shoulder into one enemy and pushing him back to the stones. The next stab came from the back, sharp and without mercy, taking his air. Blood wet his shirt, but Luke fought like a trapped beast, swinging his gun as a stick, breaking bone, hearing a cry. The 3rd knife cut into his back. The 4th hit low, bending his legs. Each cut hurt, but he would not fall, putting himself between the woman and the attackers, opening his arms as if his body only could protect her. The 5th stab brought him to his knees. The canyon turned, colors mixing into red and dirt. One bandit ran away, fear at last beaten cruelty. Luke fell forward, blood gathering under him, the sky above turning to white. He hardly felt the Apache woman kneel next to him, her shaking hands pushing on his chest to stop the blood. Her voice came to him through the dark, gentle and mixed up, full of surprise instead of fear. She spoke one word in her tongue, a question for destiny itself. Why would an unknown man give his life for hers? Luke tried to reply, but the desert took him, and all became quiet. Pain came back before memory did. It moved into Luke Carter's body slowly, like flame going through dry grass until it made a moan from his throat. His eyes opened quickly, expecting the bright light of the desert sun or the cold quiet of death, but instead he saw dark forms above him and smelled burning plants mixed with leather and ground. He lay on a bed of animal skins inside a low tent, his chest tight, every breath short and sharp. When he tried to move, pain rushed through his side and back, and he knew his cuts had been washed and sewn with care, much more than any bandit would have given. He turned his head and stopped. At the door of the tent stood 3 Apache fighters, tall and quiet, their being stronger than the pain in his body. Each held a weapon, not lifted but prepared. Their eyes never left him. By habit, Luke's hand looked for his gun, but there was nothing, only wraps and dry blood. His heart beat fast, knowing that waking among Apache fighters was often the last thing a white man ever did. One of them walked forward, his moves calm and careful. His face was tough, marked by years of sun and fight. In simple English, he talked slowly, as if thinking about every word. Luke lived, he said, because she had talked for him. Before Luke could ask who she was, the Apache woman stepped into sight from behind the fighters. Her name was Emma. Her wrists were free now, the marks still dark, but her stand was straight, her eyes firm as they met his. She told him that he had saved her life in the canyon, that he had stood between her and death without knowing her name or her people. Among the Apaches, she said, such an act was not forgotten. It made a debt deeper than words. Luke swallowed, the effort taking his strength. He said quietly that she should have let him die, that no man was worth the problem he would bring to her group. The words stayed heavy in the air. The fighters shared short looks. The one who had talked before replied, his voice strong without anger. A man who bled for an Apache woman, he said, was not seen as an enemy. Outside the tent, far drums started to sound, slow and steady like a heartbeat. Luke closed his eyes, the weight of what he had done pushing down on him. He had entered a world controlled by honor and memory, and whether he lived or not, his blood now linked him to the people watching over him. The days after were full of soft talks and watching eyes. Luke could feel them even when he slept. The quiet decision of a people deciding whether his life had purpose or risk. News went through the Apache camp that a white man had received 5 knife cuts to save one of their women. Some moved their heads and called him careless, a silly man pushed by crazy or pride. Others looked at him with interest, wondering what kind of man would lose that much blood for someone who was meant to be his enemy. When Luke was at last strong enough to stand, the old leaders called him. He was taken to the middle of the camp, leaning hard on a stick, his cuts still hurting under the sun. The old leaders' faces were marked with age and wisdom, their eyes sharp as stone. They talked of honor, of truth shown through deeds instead of words. If Luke's giving was true, they said, he would go through what Apache fighters went through. He would meet a test meant not to punish, but to show the spirit of a man. At sunrise, they brought him past the camp and left him in the open desert. No horse, no water, only a small knife put in his hand. He was told to live until the sun reached the mountains again. If he came back alive, his reasons would be trusted. If not, the desert would decide about him more fairly than men ever could. The heat came fast, heavy, and without stop. Sweat hurt his eyes as blood came through his wraps, opening cuts that had hardly started to heal. Each step was a fight against spinning and pain. But he pushed himself ahead, led by strong will only. When thirst became too much, he caught a snake with shaky hands, killing it with his knife and drinking what little blood it had, choking but living. As the day went on, far gunshots broke the quiet. Bandits were attacking the Apache camp. Luke did not wait. Weak and bleeding, he turned back, running toward the noise, every step pulling at his body. Luke reached the fight in time to see an Apache fighter fall. Anger and inner sense carried him through the disorder. He fought next to the Apache, hitting without thinking, pushed by the same reason he had met knives in the canyon. By sunset, the bandits were gone. Luke fell at the feet of the old leaders, hardly awake. One of them knelt next to him and put a hand on his shoulder, his voice calm and sure. Honor, he said, had no color. Luke had shown that with blood. Luke's getting better was slow, measured not in days but in small wins of breath and movement. The Apache did not hurry him, nor did they feel sorry for him. They cared for his cuts with quiet skill, using plants and knowledge given down through time. Each morning he woke to the same 3 fighters close, no longer seeing him as a danger, but standing near, as if his safety now meant something to them. Their being became known, almost nice, and Luke knew he no longer felt like a captive among them. As power came back to his body, he started to walk through the camp. Kids looked at the marks that showed on his skin, and old ones nodded in recognition instead of doubt. The fighters who had once watched him now practiced beside him, teaching him how to move with care, how to save strength, how to hear the land. Laughs took the place of quiet, and shared food took the place of space. Without show, he was becoming part of something he had never thought for himself. One evening, the leader called him forward before the people. In the voice that went across the camp, he talked of the canyon, of the 5 cuts taking without pause, and of the choice Luke had made when he could have gone away. He gave Luke a name said with respect, a name that would be kept. They called him 5 Wounds, not to remind him of hurt, but to honor the cost he had paid for another life. Later, as the sun went low and colored the sky and fire, Emma stood beside him at the edge of the camp. She told him he was free to go whenever he wanted. His debt was paid, his life his own again. Luke looked at the land spreading without end before him, at the people who had watched over him when he was without help. He shook his head. He said he had not acted for prize or story. He had acted because it was good. The leader lifted his stick and talked one last time. Any man who lost blood to protect Apache women, he said, would walk as their brother. The 3 fighters stepped forward and took their place beside Luke, not as watchers, but as equals. In that moment, Luke understood that he no longer stood alone. And that's the end of our story, friends. Now tell me in the comments, where did you listen to this tale from today, and what time is it right now? If Luke's courage touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe for more powerful stories, and send some stars to show your love. Thank you for being here. See you in the next adventure.